Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 366. I was white, played e4, and my opponent responded with c5, the Sicilian defense. So after a couple of normal moves, knight f3, knight c6, d4, going for the open Sicilian, takes, and now the early e5. This is a move. This is usually introducing the Kalashnikov variation. So right here, it's important to note that you have the move knight to b5. It's a very interesting move, and as you'll see later, it carries the idea of coming into d6 if allowed. So knight to b5. Not the first move you might think of if you're new to this variation, but it's clearly the way for white to try and gain an advantage in these setups. So my opponent played the rare move here, knight f6. But it turns out, yeah, it's not a bad move, knight f6. It's how he followed it up, got him in a little bit of trouble. The main move here is d6, and then we would be in the Kalashnikov variation. And if we back up a little bit, to play the Sveshnikov, you develop the knight first, attacking the e-pawn, and after knight c3, then you play the move e5. So that's the Sveshnikov. And these two lines can transpose into one another. So after d6, for example, if I were to play knight to c3, then we would actually transpose back into a Sveshnikov. But the Kalashnikov allows the move c5 here after d6. That's the main idea. There's also a secondary move here, a6, which is interesting to look at. I wasn't really aware this was even a move. This is saying that basically it's saying that black is not afraid of this check. He allows it and trades off his dark squared bishop. I would think this is pretty good for white, but apparently this is playable with a move like queen f6. Probably white does not want to trade queens right away. Yeah, queen f6, and that's also in the book. So after that, the queen would retreat. Also, exchanging queens would develop a knight for black. So black gets a tempo back. An interesting way to play if you want to surprise your opponent. It's not all bad for black. So those are different ways to play. d6, the normal way. a6 is kind of an offbeat line. Knight f6 it also appears to be a playable move. It's interesting. It attacks this pawn on e4, which is not defended at the moment. So there's no time really to play knight d6. After knight d6, bishop takes, queen takes, the knight can just grab the pawn. So at this point, I have nothing better than to transpose back into the Sveshnikov. So we're in a Sveshnikov, a standard position of the Sveshnikov Sicilian at this point. And now the only move really is d6, because at some point this knight d6 idea becomes a threat, and you'll see this in the game. So my opponent did not play d6 here. He instead played the move bishop b4. So this, in spite of his offbeat play to this point, this move really is the first mistake. So those other moves were all playable, but now things start to go downhill. So it looks like the book move is a3, but knight to d6 seems to be a move as well. And we're pretty much out of the opening book at this point. a3 is just kicking the bishop, forcing an exchange here. Fortunately, the bishop takes the knight with check, fortunately from black's point of view. But then white will take back with a knight, and white will have gained the bishop pair for basically nothing. In fact, black still has a structural weakness on with the backwards d-pawn. So good position for white as well, just to play a6. But knight d6 is also a good move. And the best defense here would be king to e7. So taking is not good, allowing this queen to come in here. It's a very annoying piece to have in. So let's see. Let's take a look at king e7. And after that, f8 I went. I'm sorry, king e7. Hang on just a second. King e7 is a recommended variation. Then knight takes c8 check. Also knight f5 check. But it's about even. So the only way for white to keep an advantage in this line is to take. Seems a bit dubious for black. It seems odd that I'm giving up my knight for this light squared bishop, which has no chance of developing, but it did expose black's king a little bit. And bishop to d3. Okay, defending this pawn because my knight was pinned. And the play would continue from there. So I guess maybe even this is still a playable line. What he played was the natural bishop takes d6. That's certainly what I was expecting. I took back with the queen. And now he needs to move his queen out to e7 or b6, do something like that. Give his king a little space. And if he can provoke a queen trade, that's probably helping him out a little bit, relieving some of his, he's got awkward development problems, and he's going to have trouble developing this bishop, for example. So he played a6, and I follow up with bishop g5, very natural move, just pinning this knight and preparing the way for my knight to come into d5. He sort of ignores this threat and plays knight to d4, although he makes a threat of his own. And that was enough to get me to castle. It looks like I could have played knight d5 anyway, but I decided to castle first, which is not a bad move. I just didn't want to have to deal with this knight takes c2 check idea. So now he didn't find anything better here than knight c6. Maybe knight to e6 is a little better. He just dropped his knight back at this point, and I play knight d5. And after thinking about it, he resigned here. So I was a little surprised. I will show you what I was thinking. I was thinking he would take on e4, which attacks my queen, and my bishop is attacking his queen. And so I was thinking I would take his queen, he would take my queen, and then I have to save my bishop. So bishop to b6. And then if we take a look at this position, I've got 2 rooks and 3 pieces, and he has 2 rooks and 3 pieces. So the material is completely even. And I wasn't, I thought for sure I was better. Obviously I got better development, and his bishop is still locked in. This bishop b6 move is pretty interesting. But, I only saw about as far as this, and I wasn't entirely sure this was winning for white. But the computer is very confident here. So resigning was not too soon. There was also a different line here. After knight takes e4, instead of playing bishop takes d8, I could have gone in with knight c7 check immediately. This is maybe the line he was afraid of, because this basically wins the queen. The king is in check, and the queen is guarding all of those squares. So he has to play queen takes c7. It's the only move. And then I win the queen, and he grabs the bishop. So this is a line where he's got 2 pieces for the queen, these 2 knights against the queen, and this looks pretty winning as well. A much more convincing line than the other one, where the material stays the same. It's just kind of a positional crush with that bishop b6 move, keeping him from ever developing his pieces. But regardless of how I would have played it, I guess I would have ended up with a winning advantage. So after I played the move knight d5, he resigned at this point. So a short game, but interesting. Some interesting points there. And it's curious in the opening how you can play a few variations of the opening and not get into trouble. But there's some critical point you reach where you have to play the right move. And he just didn't play the move d6 at that key moment. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.